And this creates the metamorphic process known as serpentinization. And a byproduct of serpentinization is hydrocarbons. And hydrocarbons are what we refer to as oil, and other things like methane gas and calcium carbonate, certain things as byproducts of the hydrothermal vents that are created by this process, because is what happens is an exothermic reaction occurs, meaning that heat is produced by this metamorphic change, and that heat has the catalyst, according to some modern scientific theories, for how life originated. And I think that that's exactly true.
Yeah, that's what we talked about earlier.
That the ancient, quote, mythologies to do with the god Mercury carrying his Sadducees.
That's exactly what we talked about earlier. Stones. That's exactly what I...
And his Sadducees was wrapped with
it's all true.
And Mercury is associated with the serpent, or Hermes with the serpent. The process of serpentinization is what this is referring to, and how life originated.
So you think the mythology...
All life, all things are technically contain the spirit of life in them. Rocks.
You think the mythology backs up the modern scientific finding that serpentinization causes the production of oil? Do you really think the ancient world would have given a shit?
And other things aren't completely inanimate as we think they are. They're just a different phase of animation. They're more inert, they're more dense, but as they become released into a different atmosphere, they can begin to change, and then life can spawn from this. Yes, this is how life originated originally, and I believe it's common throughout the solar system and most likely throughout the galaxy, wherever this process is occurring.
So you need liquid water for serpentinization to occur, though, right? Like, because, okay. Sure, okay, let's look at this one. Serpentinization involves the hydrolysis and transformation of primary ferromagnesian minerals such as olivine and pyroxenes to produce H2-rich fluids and a variety of secondary minerals over a wide range of environmental conditions. Yeah, hydrolysis, you need water. So, I guess that's why...
This is where oil is created, and we have today...
I guess that's why Mars doesn't have life.
Oil reserves,
but could have had at one point because it had water.
The world, and claiming that they're running dry.
And we know for a fact that they have methane there, which is a byproduct of serpentinization.
Fossil fuel. How is it possible?
Guys, we're going like
drilled down,
like
and
we're doing a schizo stream, but it's all just adding up. It's all just 100% adding up. Well, we do know that at one point there was bacterial life on Mars. We have an asteroid that hit... so an asteroid hit Mars, blew a piece of Mars off, and that piece went and hit the Earth, and it has fossilized bacterial life on it, right? So, earlier in the stream, we discussed the fact that these hydrocarbons could be the primordial soup that life formed in on Earth, right? Because, just like he just said, it is an exothermic reaction. It's an exothermic reaction, so it puts out heat and it produces these hydrocarbons. When you have heat and the hydrocarbons, then the cell membranes and other shit could form randomly, right? And then when they get out into the ocean water, after eventually one of them figures out how to self-replicate or accidentally becomes self-replicating, that's how life would be created, right? That could have happened on Mars because we know that in the past Mars had liquid water, and we know that in the past Mars had bacterial life, and we know that currently and in the past Mars has methane, which is a byproduct of serpentinization, which creates the hydrocarbons for the fucking bacterial life to evolve in. It all makes sense. Oil is a fucking lie. It's not finite. It's just produced by rocks. It's just rock sweat. Holy shit, oil is rock sweat. it makes so much sense. Wait a minute. It's all clicking into place. It's literally all clicking into place. That is... Like, you guys gotta understand, I've been reading this shit on Twitter for, like, 3 or 4 days. I've been reading shit on Twitter about how, like, oil isn't a finite resource for, like, 3 or 4 days. And I've been like, yeah, okay, maybe. I gotta look at it. You know, I gotta do a little bit of research before I just agree with this. But, we're an hour and 20 minutes in, and I think I'm convinced, because it just makes so much more sense. Like, how are you going to tell me that it's plant remains when there's no plant material in it? You know what I mean? There's no fucking chlorophyll chemicals or anything.
Accessed oil farther and deeper than any fossil has ever been found.
And also, if that was true, all oil would be different, because the life on... Like, if oil was produced by plants, the life all over the planet wasn't the same. It wasn't homogeneous just because it was a younger Earth. Jaggle, still don't love burning oil.
Fossil fuel is something like coal. Bitumen is coal, which was formed basically when a swamp became covered up by other things, and the swampy material produced gases and other things, bubbles that released, and it ended up forming coal, which is a more or less like a rock that's wood. You can burn it. It's a rock. That's once vegetative material, but that is not at all what oil is. Oil is the lifeblood of planet Earth. It's the lubricant.
I go spilling oil at the beach. No, what you have to do, Jaggle, is you have to take the oil and you have to inject it as far down as you can. You have to return Earth's blood back to it as a transfusion.
I firmly believe this, and you can inspect it yourself. Furthermore, we can tell where this process has occurred and where it is occurring today by certain indicative minerals and rocks that we find. For instance, anywhere that we find peridotite or garnets throughout the Earth, the process of serpentinization is probably going to have occurred nearby.
Oh, that's true, because it said that it said that it turns into pyroxenes. That makes... Dude, everything that he's saying... Okay. Everything that he's saying is verified by the 2 scientific papers we just skimmed. And, like, the shit he's saying... So, if you... Imagine. I want you to imagine. Let's imagine, for a moment, that we are Mr. BitChute oil is fake guy, right? How much research do you do before you release your oil is fake BitChute video? How much do you research? Do you read multiple scientific papers, or do you just make a video ranting about how oil is fake? Do you research the process of serpentinization, olivine in the Earth's crust, the formation of garnets? Like, I want Hans Wormad's take on this. Because a lot of people won't know, but pyroxene is a class of garnet. So when we were reading that earlier, and where did the paper say? And pyroxenes. So garnets are being created, or garnets are involved on the side in this process. A normal person wouldn't fucking know that. Unless you have at least my knowledge of geography or higher, you won't know that a pyroxene is a garnet and that that's involved in this process. This is all fucking true. Every single word out of this man's mouth is absolutely true.
And what's more, in part of my thesis in the ancient, for the existence of the actual continents of Atlantis and or Mu before the...
Okay, I recant my previous statement. Most of the things out of this guy's mouth are completely true. I want to hear his hot Atlantis take, though. I want to hear his hot Atlantis take. Because if I agree with it, he's still 100% true.
The Great Flood and the wiping away of that civilization and then beginning anew some, 10, 11,000 years ago, is that the ancients understood this process very well, and they built all of their civilizations, their settlements, in these places where serpentinization was occurring. And it's also happens to be where volcanoes and other things are at.
Okay, small issue with that. If Atlantis was an advanced civilization, which I'm not going to question, if we are accepting as fact that Atlantis was at one point an advanced civilization, if they were building their cities on top of oil reserves, right? On top of locations of oil buildup, right? Why don't we see spikes in the CO2 level from their use of that oil? We don't see that in the ice core records, and we there's no evidence for that. And so I return once more to my earlier plea in this stream. Please don't please just prove one conspiracy really well before you start linking it to your other 8 pet conspiracies. You know what I mean? Like, if you talk to someone, if you go up to a normie and you're like, hey, the oil industry is lying to you, they're going to say, of course they are. And then you're going to say, okay, oil's not a fossil fuel, it's actually an infinite resource produced by the Earth's crust at a steady rate, and as long as we keep our consumption of this resource under that level, we will forever have this available to us. That's when they're going to call bullshit. But that's when you bring out all the science, right? That's when you bring out all the science we just learned. And you say, no, due to this, and this geological process within the Earth's crust, like, this is a thing that's happening, like, you can't debate that. That's just facts, right? But then you start talking about fucking Atlantis and Mu, and then that's when you're like, okay, bro, where's the psych ward you're supposed to be in? That's what the normies are going to say. Obviously, I'm accepting that Atlantis is a thing, and I love that. I love that. But you need to make a rational scientific argument and then stop. Don't go any further. Because you are the YouTuber, and I am the commentator. You know what I mean? Like, you're not trying to convince me, I'm trying to make content out of your content. I'm just here to vibe, and, like, smoke my vape, and have some drinks, and some laughs, and maybe, convince myself that oil is an infinite resource. But your job is to create media that will let you convince people of your point of view, and that becomes much, much harder for you to do when you start bringing in Atlantis, because, as I often say, there is a certain baseline normal worldview, and when you take enough steps outside of that worldview, people can just start dismissing you outright. When you start saying Atlantis is involved, that's when they're like, okay, bye, weirdo.
They knew that this process was
anyway,
sacred,
that was a fun rant.
and that it provided sources of fuel and sources of food, first and foremost,
food
that they could use and harness to live throughout the natural climatic shifts that the Earth undergoes due to what's known as the Milankovitch cycles. Now, the Milankovitch cycles are what describe...
What are they eating? What are the Atlanteans eating out of the Earth's crust, my dude? This is what I'm talking about. This throws your whole fucking video into the trash. Like, you have me completely convinced. Bro, you convinced me that oil is produced in the Earth's crust because you knew about obscure, cool, fucking geological processes, and now you're talking about, like, oh, and also the Atlanteans just drink oil. I'm like, what? How did we get here?
Rotation
in
around
one
the sun.
video.
And it has 3 different variations, and a lot of people don't know what these are or have never heard of them. And all 3 of these variations cause dramatic shifts in our climate over large periods of time. Be it
Milankovitch
26,000
cycles.
years, which is
Okay, that's our next
precession,
rabbit hole then.
the cycle of precession of the zodiac, which is us going
Okay, yes, the
around
precession of the
center
equinox.
the
I know.
galaxy.
Thank you.
That's one thing. That's
Thank
the
you,
precession of the
spirit
equinoxes,
science
which has to do
guy.
with the tilt of our axis and the changing as the axis rotates. The north pole shifts as we go around the precession of the equinoxes. For instance, the pole star right now is Polaris, but 11,000 or 12,000 years ago it was the star Vega, and vice versa. 12,000 years from now it will be Vega again as we go around.
You don't need to talk about any of this. You don't need to say a fucking word about the precession of the equinox or Atlantis to convince people of abiotic oil.
This creates a change in the way the light from the sun is striking the surface of the earth. So it's not necessarily that the climate is
Honestly,
changing.
conspiracy
just
theory
meaning the
YouTubers'
patterns
worst
of climate
enemies
on the
is
earth
themselves.
shift where certain weather occurs.
It's absolutely themselves.
That's one part of the Milankovitch cycles. The other two have to do with the eccentricity.
I love
of
them,
the
but they're
orbit, meaning how
retards.
far away from the sun or how close to the sun we are, which has an effect of radiative forcing. Obviously, the further away we are, the colder that we'll be. The closer we are, the hotter we'll be.
Sure.
Right now, we're kind of at our closest point almost, which is why we're getting hot. And the third has to do with the tilt of the equator. Now, these create cycles of 26,000 years, 44,000 years, and 100,000 years roughly that mark rather abrupt shifts in our climate. They don't want people to know this.
My guy, my dude, buddy. What is that screeching noise in the background of your video? What do you have going on in the background? Is your desk fan like honest last legs, like right next to your microphone?
It's all by design.
I know you guys can probably hear my computer,
news or you
but
pay
like,
attention to mainstream media, it's almost a joke. They really must
like,
think
why?
people are incredibly stupid. And I'm here to try and let humanity know, and anyone that cares, that we're not stupid, and that you need to tune out of that and tune into some real stuff. Like people that don't have a vested interest in lying to you, because let's face it,
where is this man's YouTube channel?
is paying the salary
It's
of the
his
guy
oil
that wrote
pump.
the article about fossil fuels.
I've been trying to get passive income off crypto mining, but this man, he's got a desk oil pump. He's 10 million light years ahead of me.
And peak oil, or
Ah, yes. Mr. Scabby Underpants Esquire. That's who made this video. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, of course. I take all of my information from Mr. Scabby Underpants Esquire. Oh.